Good afternoon, everyone. I warmly welcome you to the first English debate of the year, which is in the senior division. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the members of the English Debating Society for 2025. Our new president is Soumya Gupta. Shriyansh Goyal is the new secretary of the English Debating Society, while Naomi Ross is the timekeeper. Congratulations to you all. Let's give them a big hand, everyone. I now request Soumya Gupta, President of the Debating Society, to say a few words.
Thank you, ma'am. As the President of the Debating Society for this year, first of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Ms. McFarlane, Ms. Zaria, Ma'am DeCosta, and all the other teachers of the English department who thought that I was worthy enough to be given this position. I also promise you that I'll do my best as the President of the Debating Society, and I encourage all of you to participate in debates this year as much as you can, because it's an opportunity for you which will help you a lot in the future as well. It will develop your personality, it gives you stage presence and everything else. And we hope as a debating society that we'll be able to do better this year and live up to the school's expectations. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Soumya. As always, we shall be conducting the senior debate in two phases, both of which will be in the parliamentary format. In the first phase or round, Allen House and Condon House will be competing against each other. In the second round, the two competing houses will be Foy and Pal. In each round, every speaker will be given 3 minutes to express their views. After all three speakers from both the competing houses have spoken, the first speaker of each house will return to the lectern to present their rebuttal. They will be given 2 minutes to do so. There will be no points of information or POIs, and cross-questioning is not permitted. Our judges for today are Mr. Kailash Singh, Mrs. Neha Chadha, Mrs. Mukherjee, and Mrs. Pundi. Without further ado, we shall begin with the first debate, which is between Allen and Condon. Their topic is implementing a 4-day work week in India would be detrimental to her progress. I now invite Soumya Gupta, the president of the side proposition, to express her views.
Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a nation striving to become a global superpower, an economic powerhouse, a technological hub, only to suddenly decide, you know what, let's work less. Because nothing screams progress like collectively deciding that we should do less of what actually drives the economy, right? A very good afternoon to the House at large. Panel, today we are here to discuss the idea of a 4-day work week in India. An idea so promising that even our traffic congestion and pollution problems are left to wonder whether they will worsen or just remain consistently terrible. But before we all start enjoying our extra long weekends, let us take a step back and ask, can India really afford to prioritize short-term comfort over long-term progress? Because if history has taught us anything, it's that nations don't develop by working less, panel, they develop by working smarter. And right now, India still has a lot of catching up to do. Now today's side opposition will come up here and speak about how implementing a 4-day work week in India will magically make people more productive, increase efficiency and boost happiness. But I asked them, since when did less work equal progress? Why do athletes run fewer laps to win more medals? Do students study fewer hours to score higher marks? Panel, we need to realize that India's economic and industrial landscape is very different from the Western countries who are experimenting with this 4-day work week. We need to understand that while reducing work days might sound progressive on paper, but in reality we are talking about a country where bureaucracy still struggles against efficiency, where a significant chunk of the population is still employed into labor-intensive sectors, where 30% of the youth still remains unemployed. But this is not a policy, it's a self-inflicted obstacle. And let's not forget about the countries who've already toyed with this idea. UK's experiment, well, they found that while some firms benefited from this 4-day work week, others could not even maintain their basic operations. And Iceland, well, they only succeeded because their government was willing to restructure their entire economy. But can India even really afford to execute such a massive transition? The answer is no. And what about government services, banks, hospitals, government offices? Do we expect them to close for an extra day as well? Because if you thought that getting a passport appointment now was a difficult task, well, imagine having to do it in a nation where Friday is suddenly the new Sunday. So while side opposition enjoys their hypothetical Fridays off, Baron, we need to face reality. The reality that India does not need fewer working days. What it needs is better working systems. What it needs is better infrastructure, streamlined processes, upskilling, none of which can be simply achieved by staying at home. Because we need to understand that at the end of the day, productivity comes from reform, not from a glorified extended weekend. With this, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. I now invite Dhanishta Vig, leader of the opposition, to present her views.
Progress lies not in enhancing what is, but in advancing towards what will be. Good afternoon to the House at large. Today's side opposition will be proving how a 4-day work week is an opportunity and not a detriment for India's progress. You see, ladies and gentlemen, progress isn't just confined to the monetary aspect, but also depends on the well-being of our workforce, productivity levels, and societal values. And these are the very points that I, as the leader of the opposition, my deputy, and my chief will be focusing on. To start off, let me state that India is far behind in social progress than most nations today. Men and women are rarely given equal opportunities, working women are frowned upon, and women who want to be financially independent are often unable to do so because of a heavy duty towards their families. The main reasoning for this is that people are often prejudiced against working women due to the preconceived notions that a woman cannot balance both work and home. But a 4-day work week will encourage more women to step out of this agenda by enabling them to work and be present for their families at the same time. This will inevitably lead to more women in our workforce, thus fostering the social growth of India at a faster rate than it is today. Just think of all the women with undiscovered potential who cannot contribute to our nation just because we won't provide them with a solution for their societal limitations. As Karl Marx rightly said, the social progress of a nation can be measured by the social position of the female gender. Moving on, let's talk about the environment. Due to reduced working days, people would commute less, and that would automatically reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and fuel consumption. Thus, a 4-day work week also aligns with the sustainability goals and makes India more eco-friendly. Now, a point to be noted, ladies and gentlemen, is that implementing a 4-day work week does not mean fully restricting people to only working 4 days a week. It simply states that 4 days is a compulsory working period. To work or not to work on the other respective days is completely your choice. Why this is necessary is because of the complete lack of rules regarding justified working hours in the unorganized sector. My chief will be elaborating more on this. To sum up my stance, I say it is high time to break the traditional cycle of workplace management and move on to a more modern and clearly more progressive approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhanishta. I now invite Wynberg-Allen, Deputy Prime Minister, to present his views.
Ladies and gentlemen, India is not a small European town. We are a developing nation of 1.4 billion people. And yet today, instead of focusing on innovation, infrastructure or workplace efficiency, we are discussing whether the solution of all our problems is simply working less. This policy is not a step forward. It is a cleverly disguised productivity trap that will slow down our economy. So before we eagerly sign up for this 4-day fairy tale, let's ask ourselves, do we want to be the nation that leads the world or a one that rests while others take the lead? A very good afternoon to the House at large. Today, I, Wynberg-Allen, will expound to you why a 4-day work week would be cancerous to the growth of India. Ladies and gentlemen, India is striving to become a global economic powerhouse. Reducing working hours by 20% would inevitably lead to a corresponding decline in output. hindering our ability to compete internationally. While some may argue for increased efficiency, this is unrealistic across diverse sectors and skill levels. Production lines cannot simply accelerate to compensate for lost hours, especially with the existing infrastructure and labor constraints. The service sector, IT support, and other time-sensitive industries would suffer from reduced availability. The agriculture sector, which is already facing immense pressure, cannot compress their work into fewer days, especially during crucial harvest seasons. This decline in productivity would directly impact GDP growth, slowing down essential infrastructure development, job creation, and poverty reduction. Not only that, ladies and gentlemen, implementing a 4-day work week would be a logistical nightmare in a country as diverse as India. A vast majority of India's workforce is in the informal sector, with no fixed working hours. How would this policy apply to them? It would exacerbate existing inequalities. This policy would disproportionately benefit white-collar workers, leaving blue-collar workers and all those in the informal sector behind, deepening the existing socio-economic divide. Ladies and gentlemen, India is still a developing nation with significant challenges. We need to prioritize building a strong economic foundation rather than focusing on widespread leisure, as global investors look for one thing before investing in a country: its work ethic. In conclusion, a 4-day work week may seem desirable to the side opposition, but life is not all rainbows and sunshine. It is a luxury that India cannot afford at this stage. Our focus must remain on sustained economic growth and equitable development. Implementing a 4-day work week now would be a significant step backward, hindering our progress towards a prosperous future. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar. I now invite Ayan Desai, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, to present his views.
Honorable members of the House and esteemed judges, I, as a Deputy Leader of Side Opposition, rise today to oppose a motion put forth by the side proposition. The assertion that a 4-day work week is detrimental to India's progress is not only unfounded, but also demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the evolving nature of work and the potential for increased productivity and societal well-being. I would now like to elaborate on the effect a 4-day work week would have on boosting our economy, contrary to the misconception that a reduced work week means reduced output. It would actually mean that a 4-day work week will inspire employees to utilize their time more wisely and more efficiently, allowing them to focus more on their results rather than just focusing on the hours worked. By fostering a better work-life balance, promoting employee well-being, and reducing stress, we can unlock the creative potential of our workforce. This brings me to my next point. Increased leisure and therefore reduced stress can be used to improve our healthcare systems and reduce the burden on them, and improving the overall quality of life for our citizens. By spreading the available work across more people, the 4-day work week will also help in increasing overall employment numbers. Shorter working hours can create opportunity for more people to enter the workforce, particularly in sectors where flexible work arrangements are feasible. In a competitive global market, a 4-day work week can be used as a powerful tool for attracting and retaining top talent, particularly among younger generation who value work-life balance. Side proposition paints a picture of a nation grinding to a halt, of economic stagnation and diminished output. This I contend ignores the vast body of evidence that is just being provided by the side opposition today. So I question you, ladies and gentlemen, where is the detriment? Thank you.
Thank you, Ayan. I now invite Aishri Dhaliwal, Chief Whip, to present her views.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Chief Whip of Side Proposition, I will endeavour to convince you that a 4-day work week will hinder India's growth and progress, not just in economic, scientific and technological terms, as pointed out by my teammates, but also in terms of social and spiritual progress. If a nation's social progress is hindered, its overall progress is hindered. According to the Harvard Business School, social progress is the capacity of a society to create conditions for all of its members to enhance and sustain their quality of life and help them reach their full potential. Now, according to psychologist Abraham Maslow's theory of self-actualization, full potential cannot be reached if needs like food, water, shelter, and security are not fulfilled. In a country like India, where in 2025, the number of people from economically disadvantaged sections have risen by 75 million, how are their basic needs of food, shelter, education, and healthcare going to be sustained for, or even barely met? Think of daily wage earners like construction workers and laborers. If construction companies decide to implement the 4-day work week policy, how will these people who live a hand-to-mouth existence survive? The father of a nation, ladies and gentlemen, Mahatma Gandhi, has said that we must always ask ourselves how our actions will affect the poorest and the weakest. Members of the jury, it is the poorest and the weakest sections of a country that will be hit hard by a 4-day work week. The 4-day work week will take away from the poor the very little that they have. There are thousands of employers and companies in India which barely pay their workers right for the salaries that they are entitled to and barely pay them overtime. The side opposition really think that these companies will pay their workers the 3 days that they don't come in for work. In fact, that they will make their work deadlines more stringent, forcing them to put in more work on Saturday, Friday and Sunday. And guess what? These extra hours that they put in will not be paid for. So what does a 4-day work week equal to? Greater exploitation of the human resource of India. I must also draw your attention to how our spiritual progress as a nation would be affected. Having 3 days off will only encourage people to engage in the sins of gluttony and sin. And they will be prone to giving into undesirable distractions like going to pubs and bars. I shudder to think of how the horrific traffic accidents caused by weekend revelers will increase alarmingly. Too much free time will make people stray from the path of morality and spirituality. Spiritual growth ensures that the decisions and choices that we make are guided by a strong moral compass. In its absence, corruption and depravity set in, which spell disaster for our nation's growth. Is that what we want? I think not. With that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Ashok. And now I call upon Kishveen Kaur, Chief Whip of Side Opposition, to present her views.
Civilization has done little for labor except to modify the forms of its exploitation. Eugene Debs. A very good afternoon to this August gathering once again. Today I, as the Chief Whip of Side Opposition, will be emphasizing on the effect that implementing a 4-day work week would have on the unorganized sector, by which I refer to those people working in unincorporated private enterprises owned by individuals or households engaged in the production of goods and services in which government rules exist but are not followed. Allow me to put forth the situation that people working in this sector face, ladies and gentlemen. Lower job security, poorer chances of growth, lower protection against employers indulging in unfair or illegal practices, lower rate of compensation, no leave or paid holidays, inadequate access to government schemes. These are only some of the challenges faced by these people, ladies and gentlemen, and I for one think that it is high time to take charge. A large concentration of India's population works in the unorganized sector. To be more precise, the Economic Survey of India 2021 to 2022 estimated that 43.99 crore workers out of 58.33 crore workers worked in the unorganized sector. And as people who have the power to make a change, it is absolutely imperative for us to establish an effective system. India is all about voicing the needs of the marginalized people, and by implementing a 4-day work week, we would not only be uplifting the lower strata of the society, but also be improving their standard of living, thereby contributing to our country's progress. Exploitation was and still is a major problem in our country. And in order to reduce this exploitation, we have to take a step towards change. These workers are made to work for unfairly long shifts for 7 days a week and are almost never paid overtime. Ladies and gentlemen, side propositions, fear-based arguments fail to recognize the immense potential a 4-day work week would have. It would not only revolutionize our economy, but also our society. India is a nation of innovators, entrepreneurs, and forward thinkers. We must embrace change, experiment with new models, and prioritize the well-being of our workforce. A 4-day work week is not a threat to India's progress. I repeat, not a threat. It is an opportunity to build a more prosperous, a more equitable, and a more sustainable future. I urge this House to embrace the potential of a more balanced and a more productive work model. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishna. I now invite the Leader of the Opposition to present her rebuttal.
Good afternoon to the House once again. As the Leader of the Opposition, it is my duty to correct the little information that side proposition has been misleading you with. Let's start with an irrefutable example. As my proposition mentioned, the UK conducted a 6-month experiment by implementing a 4-day work week in 61 companies. But what they failed to mention was that 92% of these companies, ladies and gentlemen, 92% continued with the trial and 18% made a permanent fixture. Now, if this is not proof enough for the proposition, let me refute some of their arguments. The opposition mentioned that the healthcare of the citizens will suffer. However, panel, proper scheduling and staggering shifts will overcome these challenges. And in case of emergencies or shortage of doctors, I question you. What is the probability that every single doctor in the country will deny a patient help in need? I'll tell you what it is. It's zero. Because panel, doctors are the most selfless people, and if side proposition suggests otherwise, then they need a lesson on introspection. Now, the Prime Minister also stated in their stance that India, as a developing country, cannot afford to experiment with such changes. But this argument ignores the fact that innovation is crucial for progress. India's young workforce and growing tech sector are very well suited to take on a more modern work model. Panel, we have proved that implementing a 4-day work week will not be detrimental to India's progress, but will in fact actually help create a more progressive country, which is one that values its people. What side proposition is suggesting is that India continue on the same path that it has been following. However, we are proposing a second route, another option for the people of our nation. Change is progress, ladies and gentlemen, and we cannot expect different results if we continue to resist letting go of policies that hold us back. To end, let me just say, let India change and let India progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhanishka. I now invite the Prime Minister of Side Proposition to present her rebuttal.
A very good afternoon to the House again. Panel, let me start by correcting some of the very basic, illogical things said by side proposition today. All of the speakers came up here and said the very first thing I had mentioned in my debate, that a 4-day work week in India will increase productivity, it will increase efficiency. Panel, what the outcome of this policy will be is an even more stressed workforce, because we are talking about a workforce which has to now cover cover everything that it has to do in 4 days instead of 5. They talk about a work-life balance. Panel, a person who had 5 days to work now gets 4 days to do the same work. What does it create? It creates deadlines. Deadlines which a person cannot possibly hope to meet. And then they talk about free time and leisure as if that's going to improve people's happiness. Panel, what it will create is nothing but an overstressed workforce. Now, the first speaker of side proposition came up here and spoke about the fact that a 4-day work week will suddenly enable women. Panel, what is the logic behind this? We could say that if we are implementing a 4-day week in schools, the female students who do not get the opportunity to go to school will suddenly benefit from it? They come here and pose propositions, but they do not provide any logic behind it. There was also the fact that they said shorter working hours would create more job opportunities for flexible works. Panel, where are the hours? They're reducing the work hours and they're saying they will create more job opportunities. For flexible works, they say. Flexible works are getting less hours to create more job opportunities. Now the third speaker came up here and talked about marginalized communities. She said they had no job security, they had a lower rate of compensation, they had, and it was high time we took charge. Panel, we're talking about a community which has no job security. And she also mentioned that they never get paid overtime. Panel, a person who's not even getting paid properly for whatever they're doing, they expect them to be paid when they're reducing the work hours they're to be paid for. And if they're talking about change, panel, I understand change is progress. That's what side proposition mentioned throughout their debate. What we need to change is the working systems of India, not their work days. With this, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Alan and Condon. I request you to join the audience. I also request Naomi to collect the score sheets for the first debate from our judges. Foy House and Pal House, please come on stage and take your places. I now request Soumya Gupta, the President of the English Debating Society for 2025, to chair the second debate.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The topic for the second debate today is it should be illegal for doctors and nurses to go on strike anywhere in the world. Without further ado, I request the Prime Minister of Side Proposition, Shreyansh Goyal, to present his views.
Quote, we must not confuse the protection of human rights with the disregard of human lives. Unquote. A very good afternoon to this august house. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are gathered here to discuss the proposition that it should be illegal for doctors and nurses anywhere in the world to go on a strike. To begin with, I urge you to pay attention to the phrase anywhere in the world. A deliberate choice meant to emphasize the global significance of this issue. In this context, it underscores the essential, and I repeat, the essential role that doctors and healthcare workers play in societies worldwide. While it is true that doctors and nurses have valid demands for better security, fair wages, and reasonable working hours, we believe that striking is not the right approach to address those concerns. Today, the Deputy Prime Minister will talk about the consequences of strike, and the Chief Whip will provide us with supporting examples. First and foremost, going on a strike is a direct violation of the Hippocratic Oath. When doctors and nurses start their career as a medical professional, they take an oath in which they swear that I as a doctor or I as a nurse choose to value the lives of my patients above all else. But striking is a blatant abandonment of this sacred commitment. Withholding care for personal or for professional reasons is a great betrayal to the duty to protect and nurture life. This is not merely unethical, ladies and gentlemen, it is a profound breach of the very principles that define the medical profession. Today's side opposition will tell us about examples of doctors feeling unsafe due to patients' relatives. But I ask you this, is a strike really the solution? Is taking action against those who are already under immense stress really the solution? Rather than escalating tension, shouldn't we focus more on transparency, regular updates, and psychological support for both doctors and nurses? To do so, we could establish regular feedback mechanisms from patients so that doctors can understand their needs, and doctors should have access to clear communication channels so that when the time of a dispute arises, neither the doctors nor the patients feel left out. What we need to realize today, ladies and gentlemen, is that doctors carry the weight of thousands of lives upon them. And if that doctor goes on a strike, well, those lives are lost. This is not merely about fulfilling the demands, it's about the cost at what they come. Today, we need to make a choice. We need to decide whether we prioritize those who can heal or those who need healing. Thank you.
I now request Manya Rawat, Leader of Opposition, to share her views on the topic.
On the 9th of August 2024, a 31-year-old female doctor at Arjikar Hospital in Kolkata was brutally raped and murdered in her own college building. After weeks of ignorance on the part of the government, the doctors and nurses had to take a 42-day-long strike action starting from the 5th of October for the security and justice, finally resulting in the life imprisonment of Sanjay Roy, the assailant. Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson, my fellow opponents, respected judges, and to the House at large. This is Manya Rawat, Leader of the Opposition, presenting before you as to why it should not be illegal for doctors and nurses to go on strike anywhere in the world. Strikes are a result of failed negotiations. Negotiations about things such as not ensuring workplace safety, negotiations about facing people who start a rampage when miracles don't happen. Negotiations about unfair situations like unreasonably long working hours that lead to fatigue and compromises patient care. Well, in most legal systems, there are certain ring-fence professions that are considered too important to be allowed to strike. And ladies and gentlemen, nurses and doctors are out of this league. Aren't they sufficiently important for the function of the society? Yes, they are. Ladies and gentlemen, let us not forget that what we are advocating for today are the very basic, necessary fundamental rights that every citizen of every country deserves, such as freedom of speech and freedom to assemble, and nothing extraordinary. The inhuman behavior that the clinical sector has come across lately is simply unbearable. In such cases, strikes become an important platform for ensuring speedy jurisdiction as well as a just verdict, because they help in getting media coverage and political recognition that these cases deserve. If we take away this platform from them, then who else is going to stand up for them? Now, to rest my case, I would like to quote Mahatma Gandhi. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And also, I would like to ask you all this one question, that who are we to take away the rights of those people who so willingly risk their own lives to save ours? Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Now, can I request the Deputy Prime Minister of Side Proposition, Norsam, to present his views?
A strike halts work, but never fixes the problem at hand. A very good afternoon to the House at large. Today, I, as the Deputy Prime Minister of the proposition, would be talking about the consequences that the society and hospitals face when doctors and nurses go on strikes. So to begin with, hospital room rates in India range from 2,000 rupees in semi-private ward to 15,000 rupees per day for a private room, with life support costing 15 to 1 lakh rupees daily. Additionally, a hospital's electricity bill can run into lakhs. When doctors go on strike, these critical resources are wasted and operations are disrupted, placing lives at risk and adding financial strain to hospitals and society. The true cost is not just in lost wages, but in the jeopardized health of patients. The medical profession is built on a foundation of first do no harm, yet strikes directly contradict this. For example, during a 3-day junior doctor strike in Carlisle, UK, 71-year-old Daphne Austin died of sepsis after vital blood tests were missed. Such incidents highlight the ethical dilemma posed by strikes as they compromise patient safety and breach the medical oath to prioritize well-being. As the proposition, our goal is not to malign doctors, but to present a solution. And clearly, strikes are not the answer. A grievance committee in every hospital could address doctors' concerns, allowing for resolutions without disrupting patient care. This promotes dialogue and ensures that both doctors and patients are safe. Doctors and nurses often sign service bonds for funded education and training. For example, Christian Medical College in Vellore provides free or subsidized education with the understanding that these doctors will later serve underserved communities. Strikes, on the other hand, can be seen as a breach of these contractual obligations, as doctors fail to honor their commitment to public service after benefiting from such training. What we must do is find a balance, ensuring that doctors receive the dignity that they deserve while recognizing the urgent need for their commitment to patient care to never be compromised. Doctors, while entitled to extra income through private practices, have alternatives to support themselves. Patients, however, have no such options. Doctors are seen as figures of trust, people who understand the body more than anyone else. Doctors, we spend our lives trying to stay alive, and any action that threatens that, such as strikes by doctors, should be considered illegal. In the end, strikes disrupt the core of healthcare and, by extension, the protection of life itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Nausa. I now invite the Chief Whip of Side Proposition, Deputy Leader of Side Opposition, Rudra Paukandi, to present his views.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've all heard the opening arguments from Side Proposition, focusing on the undeniable importance of uninterrupted healthcare. They painted a picture of vulnerable patients left abandoned and of lives needlessly lost. We do understand the gravity of these concerns. However, the proposition's solution, a blanket ban on worker strikes, does not solve the problem. Our first speaker has already highlighted the ethical quandaries and the importance of fundamental rights inherent in this motion. As the deputy leader, I will now expand on the practical and long-term consequences of such a drastic measure. Firstly, let us consider the reality of why healthcare workers strike. It is rarely a decision taken lightly. They strike because their concerns, often regarding inadequate staffing, unhealthy working environments, unsafe environment for patients and doctors alike, which are grave problems requiring immediate solutions, have been ignored or dismissed by those in power. Therefore, denying them this fundamental right means silencing their voices, rendering them powerless in the face of systemic failures. Now, the side proposition may suggest that alternate dispute resolution methods such as negotiation, mediation and conciliation are sufficient. But I'd like to ask them that what happens when these methods fail? What other option do healthcare workers have when their pleas for safe working conditions and for the ability to provide quality care is met with bureaucratic indifference? History is replete with examples of negotiations dragging on indefinitely while conditions worsen. Secondly, a ban on strikes will not solve the underlying problem plaguing healthcare systems. It will merely suppress the symptoms, allowing the disease to fester. When doctors and nurses are forced to work in environments that compromise patient safety, morale plummets, burnout rates soar, and the quality of care inevitably suffers. This leads to a long-term and potentially irreversible downfall of the healthcare system. Furthermore, consider the international ramifications. Such a ban sets a dangerous example. It sends a message that the rights of those who care for us are secondary to the convenience of the system. It undermines the very aspect of fair labor and could strengthen authoritarian regimes to further suppress disagreement. In addition, I would like to say that we are not supporting frivolous strikes. We are advocating for the rights of healthcare workers to be heard, to demand safe working conditions, and to ensure the sustainability of our healthcare system. Therefore, we actively oppose this motion, It is a misguided attempt to address such a complex problem with a simplistic and ultimately harmful solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudu. I now invite Ditangshu Ronyar, Chief Whip of the side proposition, to present her views.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson, judges, and the August House. Today, I stand before you to argue in the favor of the motion, strikes by doctors and nurses should be illegal anywhere in the world. Let me begin by stating, am I trying to criticize doctors and nurses? Absolutely not. Doctors and nurses dedicate their lives to serving humanity. They hold a noble and irreplaceable position in society. However, the issue in hand is not their value, but the consequences of their strikes. Consider the real-life scenario at AIMS, where a 42-year-old female patient, Binti Devi, waited 6 hours outside the hospital for her chemotherapy, only to be told to go home. She and her family had spent money, time and effort, but due to the strike, her treatment was cancelled. Can accidents wait? Can sickness really wait? The answer is of course no, ladies and gentlemen. Strikes by doctors and nurses disrupt the very essence of healthcare, and the one who suffers the most are the patients. Imagine this. You've been given a date for your critical treatment. You've traveled long distance, spent money, spent your effort to come to the hospital, and faced with a locked door. In this case, Binti Devi was faced with a locked door while she was left to wait while cars and bikes passed by. This is not an isolated incident. Across various hospitals, patients were asked to wait, their lives were put at risk. As Sir William Osler once said, the good physician treats the disease. The great physician treats the patient who has the disease. When healthcare professionals go on strike, they do not just merely halt their work, ladies and gentlemen, they halt the trust the society has bestowed upon them. Strikes in healthcare are prescription for disaster. Hospitals, which are often overcrowded and already stretched thin, face immense strain when doctors, nurses and other staff members are absent. The knock-on effect is that the system begins to collapse. The worst hit hospitals such as Hindu Rao, Kasturba Gandhi and Rajan Babu tuberculosis hospitals suffered from absence of 2,000 consultants, 5,000 resident doctors and 13,000 nurses. Without their care, vital services like OPD and emergency consultants grind to a halt. In a world where emergencies cannot be rescheduled, this isn't just a minor inconvenience, it's a matter of life and death. For every patient who gets turned away, there is someone who will have to face further complications, a delay in diagnosis or worse, a death. Mediation, dialogue with government and advocacy for better working conditions can all take place without disrupting patient care. We must find ways to ensure that these professionals can still be heard without putting other lives at risk. To conclude, as Mahatma Gandhi once said, an eye for an eye only makes the whole world blind. Similarly, strikes in healthcare, even driven by legitimate grievances, ultimately result in greater harm, particularly for those vulnerable who depend on medical care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ditangshu. I now invite Dhani Jain, Chief Whip of the side opposition, to present her views on the topic.
Good afternoon to the House at large. As the Chief Whip of today's side opposition, I am going to sum up my team's stance and also provide examples which will further prove my team's arguments. The Oregon Public Broadcasting had covered a strike on the 10th of January 2025, where around 5,000 nurses and about 150 doctors went on a strike against the Providence indefinitely. The doctors wanted the union to cap hospital admissions when the number of patients surged over and were too many for the doctors to manage, while the nurses demanded a patient-to-nurse ratio in the contract from the union and additional paid time off. The nurses' union said that the Providence was being unresponsive to the proposals from the past year and was offering very little. This, ladies and gentlemen, just goes on to prove how a strike was and is the only way the clinical workers get attention from the government, and making it illegal to strike for them would be equal to taking their voices away from them. Doctors in Nigeria's state-run hospitals went on a strike over pay, insurance, benefits and poor facilities while the country was facing the third wave of coronavirus. The National Association of Resident Doctors, or NARD, represented about 40% of the doctors of Africa's most populous country. It proves to us that low wages and poor facilities for doctors and nurses are a problem all over the world. A strike is the only way the clinical professionals can fight for themselves and fight for the basic needs and necessities. Taking the one thing that can solve and has solved so many problems, not only for the medical professionals but also people away from them, is not just of no use but also unfair. On the 11th of June 2019, before the RG incident, in Kolkata, 2 junior doctors were brutally assaulted in their medical college. It was followed by other junior doctors going on a strike, protesting and demanding the Chief Minister of West Bengal to intervene and provide them with adequate and proper security. The protests continued to 13th June, despite attempts of mediation from the government. Finally, the Chief Minister had issued an ultimatum which was denied by the doctors. They demanded that the government provide them with proper security and that the Chief Minister publicly apologized to them. The strike finally ended when it resulted in such. Coming towards the end, I would like to insist on the idea of thinking about different ways to handle strikes rather than making it illegal for the doctors and nurses to strike anywhere around the world, like the so-called problem the proposition has put forth today. To conclude, clinical professionals are struggling with all sorts of problems all around the world, and taking over the one thing that is helping them fight for the rights is just once again unfair. Thank you.
Thank you, Vani. I now invite Manya Rawat, the leader of the opposition, to present her rebuttal speech and to sum up the stance of her team members.
Good afternoon once again. The side proposition, whose whole debate has been about this one point, that how it would be unethical on the part of the doctors to go on strikes. To that, I would like to respond with an example from the Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, when Karna's chariot got stuck and Lord Krishna asked Arjun to go and kill him, at this Karna said that it would be unethical on their part to attack a warrior with no weapons. To this, Lord Krishna replied that was it ethical on his part to keep silent and do nothing when the Kauravas tried to destroy Draupadi in the gambling hall. Lord Krishna said that those people who don't show ethics have no right to expect it from others. They also talked about how they should keep the personal and professional lives apart. Well, the girl who came across the heinous crime was also on a work shift when the crime occurred. They kept the monetary aspects before the fundamental rights and also talked about breaking their trust. Well, this society broke their lives. They said that this striking is not the right way to go about things. Other methods are also there. What do you think happened in Kolkata rape case? The crime occurred on 9th August while the strike started from 5th October. What do you think the family members were doing the whole month? They tried all the other remedies. While all the other remedies were exhausted, then strike was the only companion left who helped them get justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. I now request Shyansh Goyal, the Prime Minister of Side Proposition, to present his rebuttal speech.
Quote, the best victories are those won without firing a shot. Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, today that side proposition claimed that we had one point, the value of lives. Let me give them another point that the second speaker said, the financial aspect. See, when a patient goes to a hospital and for instance a strike occurs, that patient who is obviously not getting treated suffers financially also. The hospital who is then sued in trust and in money also suffers. The doctors who are on strike obviously don't get paid and they use extra money to maintain their strike. Well, once again, it's not a win-win situation for anybody. Ladies and gentlemen, today the first speaker gave the example of Calcutta case. It is true that I agree with the cause and with the actions that should have been taken, but I do not agree with the part of strikes. See, what happened was that a life was lost in a very brutal way. But for a life lost in a brutal way, should we sacrifice other lives for that cause? I mean, what damage has been done cannot be repaired. But should we do more damage to what can be treated? Is what I mean to say, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we need to realize we are talking about the world. We do not cherry pick examples. When we talk about the world, we need to realize more connected than ever. And when a cause is just, people support it. And then I said that we didn't offer any alternatives. The second speaker said we didn't offer any alternatives. We offered an alternative of setting up a grievance community hospitals. We say you could go on a protest. A protest is short term as compared to strikes, and also they don't require the sacrifice of human lives. And third, ladies and gentlemen, they could take collective legal action. We need to realize when the cause is just, it will be supported. And if the cause isn't just, they won't get justice either way. So to put lives at risk for that, is that what it means to do those things? We need to realize, ladies and gentlemen, that no matter how great the cause, we mustn't sacrifice lives for it. There exist other alternatives. This is not merely about saying that, okay, we will allow strikes to happen as a last report. We need to understand that we lose lives, and lives are valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreyansh. I now request Naomi to collect the sheets from the judges.